From the Euros to in Copa America to Wimbledon and the Paris Olympics, sports are making headlines this summer, and there's a massive opponent on the court: climate change.
But just what environmental factors are at play when it comes to our love of the game? Well, here to tell us more is the assistant professor of sport ecology at the University of Toronto and the author of Warming Up: How Climate Change is Changing Sport, Madeleine Orr. Welcome to the show. Good to have you here.
Yeah. So, Madeleine, I don't think a lot of people associate the world of sports with climate change. So can you talk about how it is actually changing the games?
Yeah, so in your summer sports, heat is the big thing, right? We know it on a day like today. You go out for a run, you're gonna feel it. But in different parts of the country, it looks like different impacts. So in the East Coast, we're seeing hurricanes all of a sudden. We're seeing floods. In the West, we're seeing wildfires impacting air quality just about everywhere some summers. And that's impacting everybody who's gonna play outside.
All right, so on the flip side, how are sports impacting the environment?
Everything that humans do is going to have an impact on the environment. That doesn't mean we don't do it. It just means we have to think a little bit differently about it. In sports, most of what we do is organized around intercity competition or international competition, which comes with a whole lot of travel. So we have to be thinking about how do we reduce that. Again, it doesn't mean we don't do it. It just means we think a little more creatively about that carpool or taking the bus.
Okay. So in the book, you detail many very human stories, and one in particular very much is impactful, and that was the story of an athlete named Jordan McNair. Can you tell us about him?
Yeah, so Jordan McNair was a 19-year-old football player, American football. He was a rookie on the Maryland team in preseason practices a few years ago, and he collapsed on the field and ultimately suffered of a heat stroke and passed away. And
it was a heat stroke.
It was a heat stroke, yeah. And it looks like, the early signs just kind of look like you feel a little nauseous, maybe some cramping, red in the face. So it's easy for a coach to pass it off. But if they don't get cooled down, these worst-case scenarios can happen.
Wow, my God. It's a striking story, and I think a lot of people who have family members who are doing sport right now would be struck by that. But did the athletic community learn any lessons from that horrible tragedy?
Yeah, so heat stroke is 100% preventable. Everybody on that coaching and training staff got fired. And we've now seen in the US, almost every state adopting heat policies to make sure that above a certain temperature threshold, we're stopping practice or we're canceling it. We have yet to see that in Canada, but we're working on it. And hopefully the more parents know, the more kids know about what it feels like and what's normal and not normal, the more we'll start to put a stop on that.
That's great. It's sad that this young man had to die in order for those changes to be made, but at least those changes are there. All right, so how is climate change impacting the ability to play sports in marginalized communities? Because for a lot of those people, that's their only way out of that community.
Absolutely. So at a global level, at a high level, we're in an Olympic summer. The International Olympic Committee has flagged that by the next Olympics in 2028, we could see 20% fewer nations competing because they have unplayable fields, it's too hot to play, and or they're facing natural disasters that are taking up all the public money. So there's no money left for kids' sport or developmental sport.
Wow, it's striking, right? You can hear the reaction from the audience.
Yeah.
Now, we've been talking a lot about it. The Paris Olympics are just a few weeks away, and they've set a goal to generate less than half the greenhouse gas emissions from the last two summer games. So what do you think of that move? Is that a step in the right direction?
It is, and we love to see it. It's really hard to get these big parties right. Like, we hosted Vancouver just a few years ago. We know how big a production that was. It's really hard to draw down those emissions, and they've done just about everything an organizing committee can do, right? They have energy efficient buildings. They're using all existing buildings except an aquatic center. And they put that aquatic center right in a community that most needed it. So they have done everything they possibly can do.
But the Americans are bringing in their air conditioners, aren't they?
I think everybody.
On the Canadian story.
And the organizers. So originally they said they wouldn't have air conditioning. And just last week they ordered 2,500 units last minute.
Okay. So two steps forward, a couple steps back. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's too much. A cardboard bed and no air conditioning. Come on, people can only deal with so much. All right, so on Wednesday, we actually debated the idea that only locals should be allowed to attend the Olympic Games in Paris to reduce the environmental impact. Now, I don't want to embroil you in our debates, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so at most Olympic Games, international fan travel accounts for about 85% of the total footprint of the Games. At these Games, we're expecting 15 million fans internationally.
Wow.
Which is a huge number. So I don't love the idea that it's just locals. I would say anybody within the region that can get there via train or bus or any other means, no problem. I also think if it's your kid, if it's your friend, if it's community of the athletes, go support your people.
That's what I said.
100%. They need that support.
Yeah.
They've been working hard for years. So I have no problem with that. But 15 million is probably too high. So we have to do something about the rest of us, I guess. And maybe it just means, if you're going to this Olympics, maybe sit the next one out. And we just reduce that number that way.
Yeah. So I was kind of right, too.
Well, I know we're still debating. I'm like, no, we're both like, I agree. Like, maybe if we could cap it at not 15 million people and maybe it's 10, if it makes a difference.
But if that's 85% of the total, all of a sudden we're like, we've just knocked out 15%. It's huge.
Which is great. I'm still saying that if I had a child, you cannot stop.
Fair. Okay, so do you think that there's a way to turn back the clock for future generations when it comes to climate change?
I think it's a little too late to turn back the clock. I think the impacts we're seeing right now, we're going to continue to see. But that doesn't mean we can't adapt. So we can talk about it more. We can have these conversations with our kids. And the other thing is we can focus on just like, what's the 10% you can do for the planet? In sports, we think about this in terms of what's the next point that can be scored. We're not talking about the 20 points to win the game, just that next point. And once you've done it, once you've done your 10%, then get on to the next 10%. But we don't need everyone to be perfect all at once. We just got to do our little part in our corner.
Yeah, do whatever we can. Madeleine, thank you so much for stopping by and having this very interesting and important conversation. Warming Up, How Climate Change is Changing Sport is out now. And studio audience, guess what? You're all going home with your very own copy.
Hey there, what did you think? Drop your comments below and join the conversation. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can find more on everything from food and fashion to pop culture and current events. See you soon.